Let's go ahead and get started. Tonight is Monday, January 11th, 2021. The time is 6:01 p.m. This is the Town of Halifax Finance Committee meeting. On tonight's agenda, we have budgets, acceptance of minutes, reserve fund transfers, questions from Drew concerning vehicle inventory, correspondence, public participation, calendar, and as may arise. So in terms of budgets, I don't know if Charlie or Sandy wants to give an update. I know we've started the process. I think all of the departments have submitted their budgets and we've started to see some things come through via correspondence, which we'll talk about later in the meeting, but we can have just a general discussion now about budgets.
So you all should have received a notification on your email that I've been putting the budgets into a OneDrive file so that all of you can access the budgets. I am working on filling all the budgets into the FinCom budget report. That I updated it. Well, I put in some of the information current for FY22, and I am putting in the FY22 budgets as requested. I have not had a chance yet to review each of the budgets. Usually before I put them in, I review at least the salaries and the wages. I will be doing that in the next couple of days. And so by the time that gets into the OneDrive, hopefully it will be as updated as possible. But I will put that in, probably before the end of the week, I'll put that in the OneDrive file so that you can all look at it. Have all of you gone into the OneDrive and seen, and try to take a look at any of the budgets?
I was able to go in, and access it fine.
And I will tonight. Charlie helped me today. I had to get reloaded and everything. I've got all the correspondence, but I haven't looked at the budget yet, but I'll look at it tonight.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I thank you, Sandy, for doing this. I think it's going to be a lot easier than for all of us, for like you included, trying to track like emails, and especially when new and edited things come in. I think it'll just be really easy.
What I'll try to do is before each finance committee meeting, if there's an updated FinCom budget, I'll remove the old one and put the new one in so that it doesn't get confusing.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Charlie, do you want to add anything on budgets?
Well, and I don't have any good news, let's put it that way. I know that Gordon, the younger, the selectman and school committee member, had talked to Sandy and myself, sort of the first iteration of the budgets, at least at the elementary school. Sandy, tell me if I'm off by any large factor, but I think it was 175 or something like that for the regular and 250, 225 for the special ed.
That sounds about right. I was going to say 165 or something, but it's up there. But remember that this is the school's first budget, their first version. They always put one out there and then go back and refine it. And we usually have to tell them, you have to refine it down. So hopefully, I think that Gordon did say to me, because I asked him how much was wages, and I believe he said at least 70,000 of the increase was wages. Now, don't quote me on that, but that's my understanding.
My other piece of bad news is on the regional dispatch. We've been putting in, our assessment's been 150. We have our dispatch through Duxbury with a number of other communities. And what, I asked them, okay, well, what's the number going to be this year coming up? And they said 200. And we always put a little more money than just simply the assessment because there are software fees that the fire and police department have to pay. And most years, it's somehow, somewhere, I have to do an equipment upgrade for the connections between the regional center in Duxbury and our stations. So there's money always. So instead of, let's say 150, it was 163 or something like that this year, which means I'll probably bump it to something like 215. But there's another 50 that just disappeared, just like when we got the updated assessment, 100,000 disappeared. Because there's really not much I want more information, obviously, than just a sheer number as to how the number was calculated and such, and be able to share that with you all and with selectmen. But there's not going to be a lot of argument about it.
Leverage.
Because, our choices are either we stay in that region, we join another region, or we go it alone. We're not going to go it alone. So it's still cheaper than if we were going alone. There's no question in my mind about that. But nevertheless, that's another dent in what we had when we were on the first numbers back in November. It's going to, you're going to go through several steps again and say, keeping service levels the same before we look at wage increases, before we look at service improvements, and we'll see where we are. But we're, a couple of weeks in, we're farther away from, unless you make a decision to prioritize service improvements versus increases in wages, we're probably not, I'm not optimistic about looking at service improvements at this point.
Thank you. Just as a reminder to folks, especially those who are new in the process, I think now as the budgets come in, if you haven't already, now would be a good time to use that contact list to reach out to the departments that you're going to be acting as a liaison for. Even if you haven't gotten a chance to review their budget yet, that's totally fine. Even just making that first overture to connect with the department head and see if there's a time that the two of you can chat on the phone or have a Zoom meeting at some point after you've had time to look at the budget. And what you're really looking for are any, major increases, decreases, new additions, anything that you and your analytical mind has a question about is, I'm sure, something that someone else is going to have a question about on the committee. So, and you don't have to have an extensive background in finance, right? Just think about the way that you look at your own household budget, right? Or that you would look at any expense coming in. Use that sort of baseline, that reasonable standard, and that can be the starting point for conversations you have with those department heads. And then when we, as a full committee, look at that full budget that Sandy's compiling for FY22, and we say, hey, what's with this major increase in this particular department? If you've had that conversation with that department head, you might be able to chime in and say, well, here's the reason. And again, you're not advocating for it. It's not your responsibility to stick up for it or to not, or to try to tank it or anything. You're merely there to help convey information, and we'll fill that in with bringing in the department heads. We'll start scheduling them in for meetings with the finance committee, but you as a liaison also have a really important role in helping to facilitate those conversations. And if anyone wants someone to, be in on the Zoom meeting with them or on the phone call or write the email with them or whatever, I'm happy to do that. Just shoot me an email and let me know how I can help. Does anyone have any questions about the liaison appointments or process or the responsibilities?
No.
I do. I'm just not sure where I go.
Sure. So the liaison list, I know Linda sent it out in the email before. Let me try to pull it up.
Sorry.
No. The first time through this entire process, I feel like a full budget cycle is like the experience that everyone needs to have before they feel like they have more solid footing. And I'm sure the other members will say this too. So we're at the very beginning of a budget cycle. So there will be lots of questions, and I don't want anyone to feel weird about asking any of them.
Okay.
All right, let me pull up.
So I have it up now, and I do have Lauren, and I can email it again with
Perfect.
appeals,
Yes.
conservation, planning, Halifax and Lights, holidays in Halifax, housing authority, sealer of weights and measures, and youth and rec.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'm going to send it to you again, Lauren, just so you'll have it more recently. It'll make it easier.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Linda. I couldn't tell if it was in the town email or my old one that I was using before the town email started.
True.
So then for everyone, all you need to do is your responsibility as liaison, reach out to those departments. Linda also provided a list of the contact information. And if you want to see like a template email, I'm happy to send you the emails that I would have sent, which is just sort of introducing yourself and saying I'm your liaison on the finance committee. Can we make a time in the next coming weeks to just chat about your budget? I don't think it set aside 15, 20 minutes maybe. And that should give you a little bit of time to just like look at the spreadsheet for that particular department that's in the OneDrive file that Sandy created. And again, just think, okay, I'm looking over last year and I see there's a big increase here. Let me just highlight that. And when I talk with that department head, I'll say, hey, what's the reason for this increase? And they may have written a little note at the bottom, but you can flesh that out a little bit and get some more information. Just ask any questions that you would have. Like I said, I guarantee there are questions that either we'll have or members of the public will have at our next finance committee meeting. And you can just sort of get some background information and know, though, that we're going to still bring those department heads in. So you're not responsible for communicating all of the information from that department head, but it's helpful background info, especially when we haven't had a chance to get that department head in yet for a meeting, because we will have to start scheduling them. And, we're working with their schedules. And, sometimes it gets to be a little bit of a like playing battleship, right? And trying to like coordinate everything. But like I said, if anyone wants to see that, like my template email or the kind of emails I used to send, just let me know. I'm happy to send them around. And I'm sure other folks who've done it before too would be happy to send their emails.
I'd like one. I'll just say that.
Sure,
Just,
sure.
Me too.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm gonna pull it up now. I won't go through sending it stuff since we're in the meeting, but I will go through and I will find the email, and I'll just send it, blast it out to everybody.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else? Any other questions, comments, or concerns on budgets?
Mhm.
Okay. So we can go into meeting minutes, which is next up on the agenda, the acceptance of minutes. So thank you very much, Linda, for doing the meeting minutes for our last meeting, which felt like forever ago.
Yes.
That was for Monday, December 21st, 2021. The members present at that meeting were Cheryl Zarella Burke, Fred McGovern, Melinda Tarsi, and Tom Connolly. So just a reminder, only the folks who are present for that meeting can vote to accept the meeting minutes. So I would entertain a motion for the Finance Committee to accept the minutes as written for Monday, December 21st, 2020. And I will roll call folks. So first up, Lauren.
Oh,
I think you
yes.
need to get the motion first.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yep. It's been a
Motion
while.
in a second.
I make a motion to accept meeting minutes from December 21st, 2020.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Awesome. Thank you. Before I blunder ahead, randomly doing stuff. All right. Now I'll roll call folks. And if you weren't there, you can vote as to abstain from that vote. So first up, Lauren.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Drew.
Aye.
Fred.
Aye.
And myself, Melinda. Aye. All right. Thank you, folks. And thank you again, Linda, for doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
Next up on the agenda, we have any reserve fund transfers?
We do not.
Lovely. Thank you. Next up, questions from Drew concerning the vehicle inventory. I think this is from our last meeting or from a few weeks back. Drew had asked, and Drew, if you want to tag in, I don't want to misrepresent anything you're saying, had asked questions about the vehicle inventory in terms of the police cruisers and just a general, I think, question about that, and maybe even the fire trucks. And I know Charlie had prepared some answers, and we held off, Drew, so that we could talk about it when you were at the meeting as opposed to at the last one.
I don't think I have any questions.
You're all good?
I think so.
Okay, awesome. All right, moving right along. Correspondence. So I know we do have some emails concerning, let me get out my work email. We have some communications concerning the upcoming wage and personnel hearing, which will be on January 25th. And again, you will all remember that wage and personnel, the board itself was disbanded. And now the responsibilities of wage and personnel will go to both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. And since each was sending one committee member to the wage and personnel originally, like this just basically helps democratize a little bit of the work. but it seems that there are some, in the scan that Linda attached to today's email, we have one memo from the HES, Halifax Elementary School Administration, concerning positions and cost. We have a capital plan request from the library. We have some explanation from the police department concerning some articles that they're going to request. So just as an overview, the operating budgets for departments are going to be in what we call Article 4. That's the standing article on the warrant. All the operating budgets appear under Article 4. But if stuff falls outside of an operating budget, departments might request it as separate articles. So that's why if you've ever been to town meeting and we voted on a major piece of equipment or a major building repair as its own separate article and not part of the operating expense for that department, that's what we mean when we say that they're going to propose an article. It's for usually a major capital expense. So we have a 3-point request from the police department concerning some capital items. We also have a memo to the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee from Charlie Seelig as a town administrator, requesting the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee review the grades and pay rates for the positions currently in grades 6 and 7 in the town's wage and personnel bylaw. So you'll see a list of all the grades 6 and 7 positions, because we've had at least 2 requests from departments to review folks in those, or positions rather, in those grades to see. And out of fairness, and what we've done for the last 2 years is that we'll either review all of those graded positions together or we won't. Just because they are all within that same band. And what we haven't reviewed them on the last 2 years because we were conducting a full reclassification and analysis 2 years ago. And then last year we didn't, again, we were just down to 2 people and really didn't have the capacity, nor did we think that it was going to be fair, especially if we were going to eventually create like a different format for wage and personnel. So like I said, this will help spread some of that work and allow more eyes to be on the process, which I think is a really good thing for the employees. And then we have a request for some bylaw changes from the fire department. Bylaw 35-1 Appendix A from the fire chief. So I know we got these today, so I think we'll give folks, if it's okay with everyone, we'll give folks a chance to review these, but those all did come in as correspondence. And I believe we got the capital request from the library in a separate correspondence,
Yeah.
Linda, but I think it's all it's the same plan.
Yep. And then you also, I think, had the first draft budget for the elementary school, and their capital improvement plan came last week. I think I sent it.
I see. Yeah, the long term. Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
So will we vote on each one of these individually? These, like the CapEx stuff for the police department.
Mm-hmm.
Will we vote on those individually, or those will be part of a budget process?
Well, that's a great question. So all of that will be tied into the budget process, but we think about capital items differently because we don't fund them out of the revenues, which is what we fund the operating budgets out of. So we're funding those out of, or we don't necessarily, right? We try to fund the operating budget exclusively from raise and appropriate from the revenues we receive that way. And we try to fund those big capital expenses through free cash or stabilization. Those are separate funds that we try then to not dip into for operating, right? So it's just like in our household budgets when we might try to pay for big things out of our savings accounts, right? Those big kind of once, the heater goes, that kind of thing.
Sure.
As opposed to trying to pay for your groceries out of that, right? A recurring operating expense. And you'd like to ideally have enough money in your income to not have to pull from your savings to pay for that kind of routine expense. So that's the way we've been approaching the capital items. And so we do all talk about it holistically as a budget, but what we've tended to do is go through everyone's operating budget first. And then as we're getting more information from Sandy and Charlie and Linda and others, we start adjusting how much we think we're going to have in free cash or in stabilization funds and what kind of capital projects we can fund from there. So we talk about the whole budget together, but it's such different pools of money that we sort of
Sure.
bracket those discussions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks. That's great.
Then That's a great question. That's something that comes up a lot on town meeting floor, right? Well, and they'll say, well, didn't we just pass this department's budget? Why are they asking for this big piece of machinery? So I think that that's a really like a relevant question that comes up a lot. All right. Public participation. Do we have anyone from the public who wants to ask questions or comment? Okay, hearing none. We can move on to calendar. I know for this month, all right, so today's the 11th. We are scheduled for a hearing on the 25th. That would be that wage and personnel, and that's when anyone who's going to bring or request bylaw changes for the town will present those. We've already started to receive, for example, I read the correspondence from Charlie concerning the reviews of those positions, but Charlie, sorry, I'm completely blanking. What's the deadline for the submissions for those, the wage and personnel?
Well, for everybody but finance and the selectmen, it was a couple hours ago.
Okay. That's what I thought. I had the 11th in my head, but I'm like, maybe it's the 14th.
Yeah, the finance and the board of selectmen can bring in their own proposals during this process. Obviously, in terms of timing, we're probably looking at late March, early April, but obviously we'd like to get things done before then, before we go to press. I mean, last year was for any number of different reasons, was weird. My hope is we're setting aside the environment we're in, we're going to follow the normal schedule this year. Town meeting on May 10th, get the warrant out to press in early April, get budgets, set up before then, et cetera. Same thing with wage and personnel.
So from a calendar perspective, how would everyone feel about starting to just hold each Monday night, save for any holidays going forward? And maybe starting to think about getting some of the department heads in, like in February. Is that too? I mean, I know we'll never have like firm numbers until we get really, really close, but especially for the departments that aren't asking for major changes, but we still want to meet with those department heads. I'm wondering if we could start to schedule folks in February, and that would give us February and March to get all our meetings done with those department heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that sound good to everybody?
Is it typically, I mean, it's going to take an hour each on even the littler ones?
No.
Or so we could do two or is that too much?
No, that's a great question. So we try to either put a couple big ones together, like a couple big departments together, especially if they're related, or we'll say, oh, let's get like 3 or 4 of the ones with smaller budgets in the same night, or like 2 little ones and 1 bigger one, like try to make it so that we're not keeping the department's heads there super late, but also that we're not, doing like a marathon session. I don't think we've ever had more than like maybe 3 department heads in a meeting at a time.
Thanks.
But this might also allow them more flexibility in their scheduling so that they can like hop into a Monday night that works for them, as opposed to us like forcing them into one. So is everyone okay if we hold? So that would be February 1st, February 8th, February 15th.
I think that's President's Day.
Oh, President's Day is the 15th. I thought, yep, you're right. All right, so not the 15th, but the 22nd. Thank you, Cheryl.
March 1st.
March 1st, 8th, 15, 22, 29. From a scheduling perspective, Linda, would it be easier for us to just put out a general call to departments with those dates and say, or like I can come up with like a doodle poll, like where folks can like pick their own dates and it can exclude when we've hit a certain limit? Or would you prefer that the finance committee come up with a schedule and then see if we can make that happen? What's easier for you?
I think I was actually just going to suggest that if you wanted, I could just put out an email to the departments to begin with, just to say, these are the dates we're looking at. And then if we see a date starting to fill up too much, we can certainly try and work around that. But I think probably the best bet is to say, like, here are the dates, what works for everybody, because some people are going to want to go early and some are going to want to go late. So might as well get ourselves set that way to begin with.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds awesome. And even if we start February 1st, that still gives us a few weeks we'll know ahead of time as a committee, okay, these departments are coming in, and we can take a look at their budget. And then when that department head comes in, normally what we do is, and thanks to Sandy, we have everything all in that one OneDrive. We'll pull up that department's budget. We'll just really kind of go line by line unless there's any, if there's no big changes, we don't have to go line by line through their budget. But if there are certain things, we'll make notes of them. We can ask questions. And even if the liaisons haven't had a chance to meet at that point, they can still follow up with that department head later if that department head ends up coming in a little on the earlier side. But I think that will let us, there's going to be some nights when none of the department heads can join us, and that's fine. But I think then we'll still be able to, think about maybe that first 45 minutes of our meeting time. We'll be meeting with any department heads we have, and then we can get our business done after that. But I think that should work. So as long as everybody's comfortable with that, we'll go ahead and Linda, if you wouldn't mind, not only A, posting for all those dates, but also B, just sending out that email blast to the department heads, and then we can start filling in some of those meeting times.
Sure.
Thank you so much. All right. Anything under As may arise?
All right. Can I ask a solar farm related question?
Sure.
I don't know if Charlie, whether or not you need any help with the coordination with the utility for the electricity, we have National Grid, so we get a electricity bill every month, and then but just if the solar farm is built, the utility crediting it so that we don't have to pay that, or we have to pay much less, and then maybe if there's anything else, if it has to be paid to Halifax Solar, if it's a reduced bill or anything like that. But the electricity credits.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. One way or the other, whether it's a credit against our meter or whether we're selling electricity to somebody else.
Yeah, behind the meter versus not behind the meter.
What we would be doing if we get that solar field built, then part of when we go out to bid is in fact to get the best deal. In essence, the greatest return for the town, whether it be a credit on our bills, whether it be just straight out selling the electricity that's generated to another party or whatever. I'm not particular about which way we make the money. I'm more interested in making as much money out of that as possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. All right.
Well, if I could ask, what data will we rely on for wage and personnel on 11/25? What will they just be presenting then, or will we be deciding? And so for example, the logic of why our first responder administrative assistants are graded lower than everyone else. Just how do we work through that? What data will we expect, Sammy?
Yeah, the first responder administrative assistants are not graded any lower than any of the other administrative assistants. All administrative assistants are grade 6. It's assistant to department heads. It's statutory assistants that are required
so it is a different job
that are in grade 7, but none of the administrative assistants or the assistants are in grade 8.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we've done in the past is we'll have the hearing, which is basically will just be the presentation of the requests.
Okay.
And then at least what wage and personnel did in the past, which I presume will happen again with just the full Board of Selectmen and full Finance Committee, is that we would then have specific meetings where we talked about those particular proposals, right? So let's say that there was a proposal to change uniform allowances for everyone who gets a uniform. I don't know. We might post on an upcoming meeting, look, we're going to be talking about the uniform allowance issue. And that way, anyone who wants to come and speak to that issue there, who wants to submit information, ideally they would have already submitted, but if we have questions for someone, maybe we bring all the department heads in who have co-signed that request, let's say, we ask them questions. So it'll be a lot like the budget process, and that we'll get everything in, we get time to look and digest, and then we'll publicly ask for specifications and answers on any questions that we have.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And this will be a little bit weird because it's going to be the finance committee and the board of selectmen both in full doing this together, whereas it used to just be that dedicated wage and personnel board. So we might have to think about, do we want to set aside separate meeting time, or do we maybe want to start, like, do some wage and personnel stuff half an hour early? We can post at 6:30 for the wage stuff. I don't know. And like, Charlie, whatever you think makes the most sense and is the least
Part of it's
logistically impossible.
Yeah, part of it's going to depend on the selectmen's schedules. Gordon, for instance, has school committee meetings, but it's not necessarily every Monday night or something like that. But we'll work it out.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions? Anything under As May Arise? All right. So I have a chat from Gordon in the chat box. Everyone should be able to see. Silver Lake will present their budget on 1/14. That's this coming Thursday. I believe Fred still has. Fred, I think you're still the liaison for the Silver Lake folks. Are you going to be able to check that out?
Yeah, I'll get the Zoom meeting and attend that.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much. All right, hearing nothing else from the public, if anyone has anything, let me know. If not, I would entertain a motion for the Finance Committee to adjourn at 6:32 p.m.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, I'll roll call us out. Lauren?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Drew?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
And myself, Melinda, aye.